Hello and welcome to this session on the Mastery of Profession, celebrating the journey of Master Practitioners. My name is Chandana Sanyal and I am the EMCC Global Lead for Individual Accreditation. It's my absolute pleasure today in this session to introduce to you three Master Practitioners who you'll be hearing from shortly. We have Lakshmi. Lakshmi is an EMCC Master Practitioner. She's an ICF, MCC, and an ACTC, and she's just recently completed her tenure as the president of ICF Chennai. We have Vincent Lenoche, and he is the associate professor of change at Sheffield Business School. There you are. Thanks very much for being here, Vincent. And he's going to share his journey. And then we have Sandra, and she is a specialist in transactional analysis and also a coach and a supervisor. So is Vincent. Vincent's also a supervisor, ESIA. So they're going to take us through their journey in terms of their experience of the EMCC MP process, their professional contribution, and where they're at now. But before I do that, I'd like to just take you through the requirements for the standards very briefly before you hear from them. So we will share with you, like I said, an outline of the Master Practitioner requirement and process. That's going to be really short and sharp. All the information on Master Practitioner is available on our website, but I'll take you through it. Then, each of our Master Practitioners is going to take you through and share with you their experience and their journey as an MP. And then we will just finish off. There's going to be almost 20-25 minutes for asking questions, but also along the way, as each Master Practitioner share their story, please feel free to ask your questions on the chat. We will pick those up as each person finishes. So there's some interaction happening. We want the dialogue, but also we want to give our Master Practitioner the space to be able to tell us their story. So again, this is being recorded. I've mentioned about the chat, so please put your questions in the chat. If you have a question, also feel free to unmute and ask a question. So in terms of the Master Practitioner requirement, as across all the 4 different levels of EMCC EIA accreditation, there is the training, qualification, and experience. And at a Master Practitioner level, we are looking at either a master's level qualification in coaching, mentoring, or related topic, or also wider experience and prior learning, a range of different training you may have done. So as you know, with EMCC, with the inclusive aspect of our assessment, there is the EQA and the non-EQA process. So you can have a qualification and we can take that into account as a part of the assessment, or you may come with significant prior experience and learning, which will also be considered as a part of the process. Then there is the proven practice in terms of your commitment to your CPD, which at Master Practitioner level is 48 hours of CPD per year. And also your commitment to supervision in terms of a minimum supervision of 4 hours of one-to-one supervision a year, which is a quarterly. But ideally, the recommendation is, as a Master Practitioner, you have an appropriate supervisor in terms of a ratio of 1 hour of supervision for every 35 hours of practice. So those are the similar kind of requirement, and really the focus there is on practice of coaching or mentoring. And then we move to this unique area of EMCC Master Practitioner requirement, which I'm saying is unique because I don't think it is in any of the other professional bodies at the moment, which is around this thing about contribution to the profession. The contribution to the profession that is both which is looked at both in the terms of its depth as well as the breadth. So the language that is used in the criteria is its sustained and substantive evidence that we are looking for in terms of contribution to the profession alongside your practice of coaching and mentoring, which we've just talked about. I have a slide here which I like to bring up just to kind of frame the reflection element, which is a key part of EIA assessment, but all kind of the requirements and the assessment accreditation for EMCC Global. And for a master practitioner, we are looking at that level of reflection through your application that demonstrates your critical reflection, your reflexivity in the way you compare theories and models, how you've maybe established your own model of practice, and also how you're able to synthesize information, new thinking within your own practice and profession. And then in terms of more detail on the contribution to the profession, the first thing is that we're looking for significant and substantial, like I said, contribution to the profession, which is over a period of 5 years, essentially over a period of 5 years. And I've often wondered about this 5 years, and being in this role and talking to many master practitioners and through the assessment, one of my personal reflection is, how would I show impact if I haven't done something for a certain period of time? So I'm really comfortable with the 5 years now in terms of the depth you can show if you've been doing something consistently. So if you look at the right-hand side, those 4 boxes I have here in the blue color, the kind of things we are looking for in terms of the contribution, first is the quality. So whatever you identify as your contribution, how do you justify that as a contribution at a master level? This is a master level contribution to the profession. So there has to be a rationale for that. Also some element where this is showing your development, contribution to new innovation, new thinking, new knowledge, exchange of knowledge, in whatever area of coaching or mentoring it might be. So we're looking at something which is different, which is unique, which is innovative. And again, like we said, within the 5 years of the contribution, we may be in roles for a long time. It takes us time to get into the role. And then the requirement in terms of that is at least for 2 to 3 years, you've been doing it with some regularity over 5 years. So again, like you can build your evidence of practice from that. And then finally, we are looking for 2 different areas of contribution. The criteria says that you can have one area of contribution if it's very substantial. In terms of when we are supporting people with their application process, we do encourage them to consider 2, unless obviously you are maybe writing or researching in a field of coaching and mentoring where it's really evident and your contribution is substantial, and that may be the case. But generally speaking, we're looking at two areas of contribution. And the EMCC guide gives us some examples of the kind of things we are looking for as contribution in this regard. So first is that you may be working within a professional body. It can be EMCC, but it can be any other professional body. You will hear from Vijay Lakshmi. She's been a lead in ICF. So you can be participating and engaged with some other professional body, so long as it's related to coaching and mentoring, and you're able to show the area of your contribution, the impact, and the period of tenure as well, as we've said. So that's one category. The second, which is the one we see in a lot of master practitioners, is education of other mentors and coaches. What we would say as you are in a role of an educator of coaches and mentors in the field. So this could be that you are delivering programs, or you're part of a faculty delivering programs, you've designed and developed programs, whatever area of your contribution as an educator. But again, thinking about that, that period and the depth of contribution and the series of activities you may have undertaken over a period of 5 years in that area. And then we have research. So research is an area of contribution because you could be contributing to theories, you could be having developed your own models and tools that you're offering to the profession as new thinking, new knowledge. But again, it's about where is this research? Some of us may be starting research. For those of us in academia, it's a long process. So it is not just about the research, it's about the dissemination. So it's got to be at a space where you are disseminating and others are learning from your research. It's a research which is out there, so it's actually making a contribution to the profession. And then we have the category of lectures, articles, publication for the profession, where you're disseminating thinking, your knowledge, and there's a knowledge exchange from you in terms of leading conversations in coaching and mentoring. And finally, we have the category of promotion of the profession, apart from obviously, when you're not the commercial aspect, but this is more about what we find sometimes we have coaches and mentors in very significant role in the corporate industry, in organizations where they may be head of coaching and have been working in a corporate area, or in consultants role working across organizations where they have built coaching culture, they have introduced coaching as a part of leadership and management behavior, and they have made significant contribution in terms of impact, and they can actually evidence that in their application. So these are the categories we have, if you like, in terms of thinking about your contribution to the profession. So it is about looking at, if you are considering the master practitioner application, it's about a combination of what is on the left, on the right of this slide, really. You're taking into consideration that, is this a master practitioner level contribution? How is it different, unique, and innovative? How many years have I done this for? How can I show impact of this? And then, identifying 2 areas of contribution from what we've just talked about, and being able to give a really clear narrative in terms of the contribution to the profession you're making. And then the last point I want to make here is about impact. So in the application, it is important not just to identify your activities and areas, but also to be able to think about these 3 questions in terms of your rationale and your impact analysis of your contribution. So again, like I said, why is this a master level contribution? How is these activities or initiatives that you've been involved in, or the role that you've been involved in, actually making a contribution to the profession, to the development, further development of the coaching and mentoring profession? And then finally, how is this, your role in this master coach or mentor role, how has that evolved your own development as a coach as well? So in terms of positioning your contribution, these are the 3 questions, if you like, overarching questions to consider in positioning your application. So like I said, this guide is in our EMCC guide, which is on our website. So you can refer back to it if it's helpful. It's on page 9. And then if you think you are, because what you're going to hear about at the moment in the journey. So one of the concept of the master practitioner is the journey. So wherever you are in the journey, there's opportunity within EMCC to further extend your practice, your network, by being part of, the GPS dialogue series. This is where we are. There are lots of opportunities of engaging through EMCC in terms of dissemination of your knowledge, your research, or any other area of thinking that you want to contribute to the rest of the community. And finally, if you feel that you are there in terms of your contribution to the profession, the depth we are looking for, the breadth and depth, then we can arrange a one-to-one conversation to find out more. Because one of the things we like to do with the master practitioner applicant is to have a one-to-one conversation, so we can really position and get clarity around, what you're doing, how is that related to the requirements, to make sure we can manage the expectation, and also we can guide you in terms of next steps towards through the journey of the master practitioner. So I think that's in terms of the criteria and what I'd like to say. I'm going to invite our 3 master practitioners to share their stories now. So first we have Vijay Lakshmi. So I'm going to invite Vijay Lakshmi to speak now. She is in India, so it's on special request she's here talking to us.
Thank you, Chandana. It's really an honor for me here today to not just share my experiences and my journey, and a little bit of a rewind for me in terms of what all this meant or still means to me as a master practitioner. But I think also more importantly, I think I am in a group of participants here who are all very keen and curious to know. So I'm sensing that a lot of them are already on that journey. So I just feel this is going to be a nice and easy dialogue. So I don't have too much of content or too many slides. But I just want to, as the title of my presentation says, and this was also the title of the session, it was about celebrating the journey of being an EMCC master practitioner, coach, and or mentor. So I'm just giving it a twist about, this being my journey. And I call this a celebration. And it is a celebration in more ways than one. And perhaps at the end of my short sharing, you will also get that sense of joy and everything else that goes into calling something a celebration. So just want to set a frame of reference to, where can one begin, right? I mean, where do you start with all this? You start with one fine day saying that I want to get an EMCC credential. Or do you look and say, okay, let me assess and see if I'm ready. Do I meet the cut? Is this for me? Is this worth my time investment? And all those kind of questions that I think everybody faces. I perhaps also went through those myself. So I'm just going to set a frame of reference. And I like to actually start my narrative with the competence framework. And while Chandana, I know, kind of gave you a very good overview about the entire requirement and all the various dimensions a master practitioner is really assessed on, I'd like to start with the competence framework because I think that's something a lot of us as coaches and mentors, we can relate to, or even as any professional. And I'm really going to talk about the mastery benchmark here. And so bear with me because there will be a little bit of content, but that's very important for me to reference into before I share about my own journey. So I think the purpose of the competence framework, like any other framework, is really describing a mentor or a coaching professional at 4 distinct levels of development. Yeah. So, and I think that's really the definition of why these 4 levels and what these 4 levels mean. And I think an important benchmark is the competence. It's an easy way. It's an understandable way. It's a clear way of seeing, okay, where do I, am I ready to be a senior practitioner, or should I be thinking of a master practitioner, or am I somewhere in between? And I know there are a couple of acronyms here, and I saw 1 or 2 clarifications being sought in the chat box. The EQA is really, is really defining of the training or the service provider who and the content that is required for learning and development at the mastery, at the MP level, right? And when you look at an MP level descriptor, and this descriptor is available across the levels of accreditation, it's really about people who will practice as professional coaches and mentors. And please, I'd like to draw your attention to the things I've highlighted in blue across my presentation. And they will create their own, coherent approach, drawing on a wide range of models. So it's about your approach. So I think that's the first sort of requirement, right? And wishing to or currently working with a range of clients, contexts, and organizations. So I think the range is another very important word that I would like to refer to, and which I think is important as it stands out at this level, right? And what differentiates it from the other levels. And if you really look at, the EIA, which is the individual accreditation, and at every level of accreditation, there are descriptors, and it talks very clearly about who is this level appropriate for. And the EIA is, an accreditation for individuals, and it's not to accredit a program or something like that. And if you really see, and there are 4 or 5 things, a lot of which Chandana has touched upon. But what I would like to draw your attention to are the words in blue. So the first one is about people who create their own innovative approaches, right? Based on critical evaluation of a wide range of models and frameworks. The second one, if you really look at it, working with clients using skills experiences. Of course, everybody does that. But I think the important thing is being flexible and, flexibly being able to widen their client's perspective beyond the current issue or context. And more importantly, stretching their own learning and development through this kind of work. So the kind of focus on learning development is about that stretch. Thirdly, again, there is a focus on innovative approaches, where you are working with those kind of innovative approaches tailored to requirements of your clients. Chandana spoke about this active contribution to professionalizing of this field of being a coach or a mentor. Almost like, saying that if this field needs to be professional in an ongoing manner, it's really up to us, community of coaches and mentors, to really raise the bar and be actively engaged with professionalization. A body is not going to do that. It's us members who really need to, or us credential holders, accreditation holders who need to be doing this. Finally, using reflective practice with supervision, and Chandana spoke about those requirements as well. But I think this is important because this is also unique across many other coaching, accreditation bodies. Not everybody insists on reflective practice with supervision. And why have I run through all this? Because I also want to link this with saying in the EMCC MP journey, and I would say across the EMCC levels, but since we're talking about Master Practitioner here, and especially because I also hold a credential, other credentials, these are the ones that stood out for me in my own journey with EMCC on the mastery journey, which is this component about identifying, or rather understanding the self, right? We might think this is very intuitive, but I think this is some place where a lot of professionals really tend to get a little slack. We think we know ourselves, but this is continuous work in progress. And the EMCC process really allows you to do that. And it's not just awareness for the sake of awareness, but this awareness, immediately translating to managing your own effectiveness as a coach or a mentor. The second competence that stood out for me and stands out for me is the commitment to self-development. Like the way there's a commitment to CPD and contribution to the profession. This is a competence, right? That's really required for a coach or mentor, because this is about, really resulting in maintaining the reputation of the profession. So like I said earlier, if we need to maintain the reputation of the profession, then I think this commitment to self-development cannot be an optional item, but it needs to be part of the competence. The third one is use of models and techniques, which again, I think is quite a distinct requirement. And this is not just simply about using models and tools, but I think the important thing is demonstrating your own unique approach, right? Building, developing, relying on your own tools that work for you, techniques that work for you, approaches that work for you. And then finally, we have evaluation. This is again something that is so much encouraged in the EMCC competence framework and very important at the master practitioner level, because this is about not just having evaluation formats, but really, I think, again, adding to the effectiveness of the work you're doing in serving your clients and establishing a culture of evaluation or outcomes, right? It needs to be culturally a part of your practice. So I would say, in the beginning of my journey, these were the shifts, or rather, these were the things I needed to pay attention to, because perhaps in very direct ways, I was not doing it, or even if I was not reflecting on it, or even if I was reflecting, I was not recording it. So when you start off on your MP journey, these are the things that one needs to be comfortable with. And that was the starting point in the journey. Of course, the other thing was really look at the competence matrix, which very clearly says, and nobody needs to tell you, you would know yourself which level you really fall at and use that starting point. And sometimes you may fall in between levels, which means that you build yourself upwards. And then when you're ready, you go into application. So to really put that together alongside what Chandana spoke, there were a couple of themes that emerged for me in this journey, right? Themes I needed to be comfortable with, because often there is a very narrow view of saying that a coach or a mentor really needs to be just good at their craft, right? In the session, in delivering that engagement. It's quite narrow. And while there's nothing wrong with that, I think, at a mastery level, this is really what differentiates a master level coach or mentor. And this is something I can connect with a lot, whether it is self-mastery, what I spoke about in the competences, professional contribution that Chandana has been mentioning. And, we saw what all could go into this professional contribution. And I saw a question again in the chat box, does it have to be international? In my own experience, while some of my contributions had that potential, etc., some of my contributions were extremely localized. In fact, the kind of work I did during the COVID times, really sort of leveraging on coaching and mentoring and utilizing that to make a difference to the world, very much confined to a geography, was something that I was able to showcase. And something I'm really proud of course. But, those are the kind of contributions that are accepted. Or Chandana spoke about the fact I, was a volunteer leader. I am a volunteer leader with another coaching organization. And all of those contributions were recognized and acknowledged as well. Right. So it's not that you need to make contribution to EMCC or internationally. It's really about the depth, the width, and I think the impact of that contribution. Innovation and thought leadership. These were two themes that I completely loved, because as a person, I've always felt that, as coaches, our role, does not lie in a limited confine with our clients. And we can be thought leaders. We can bring in innovation. We can try out new things. And that's how the bar also raises, doesn't it? Otherwise, we would stagnate. We'd be using things that worked 30 years ago. So these, again, were two very important themes that emerged for me in the journey. Last but not the least, continuous professional development. And there's another acronym there. This is not the EMCC acronym. It's my own, which stands for breadth, depth, and variety. So if you really look at CPD, it's not just doing more of the same thing, but you are encouraged to build in CPD, which has all these three. So everything is very holistic about this journey. So yes, there would be moments of discomfort for people who are very comfortable with, very clear ways of assessment. This is a far more broad-based, and Chandana said, inclusive way of assessment. And one needs to be mentally ready for that shift. And that's why I'm calling out these themes that really stood out for me. And if I were to guide or mentor somebody on the EMCC journey, which I do, this is what I share, saying that, are you ready to even start thinking about these things? I'm going to round this up with 5 of my very personal reflections. And these are the reasons I say I celebrate my journey to being a master practitioner. And it is work in progress. You have to renew this every couple of years. And that's a reason why it's work in progress. It's not something you achieved and arrived at. And even the process for renewals on EMCC at this level is quite stringent and quite demanding. So as a master practitioner, you have to really be on top of your craft and be a leader and be, leading the profession in some ways. The first one is go slow to go fast. Many of you may have, heard this before, but I cannot tell you, how appropriate it is for the EMCC journey. Since the time I started my journey, I took a good 3 years to actually, and I'm not saying that has to be a benchmark for everyone, but, I took my pauses, I took my time, I took my timeouts, I took my validation, revalidation, and all of that. But therein lies the beauty of this application. It's not something that you get done within a month and then, because yes, sure, maybe you can go into application, maybe you can get your MP, but the real meat of it, right? The real journey, the real experience comes when you do it slowly, steadily, intentionally, like the way mastery is supposed to be. The joy of reflection, while I know we can say we can all reflect, we can take in our accomplishments, we can put it all together, we can backtrace our journey to becoming a coach or a mentor. The EMCC application process actually allows you to do that. For me, it was a great opportunity for soul searching, to truly ask myself those questions, right? Those hard questions. Who am I? What's my role as a coach? What's my statement of purpose? Why coaching, right? Not to impress anybody else, but to really be true to myself. Third one, this process allowed me to shine the light on my own uniqueness. So, we spoke about tools and approaches, etc. I really realized that, I did not perhaps have a lot of fancy tools, but there were some things that were my go-to. Systemic approach. I'm a systemic practitioner. I believe a lot in minimalism and its application to coaching. I also am an embodiment practitioner. And these are things that stand out in my practice. And EMCC, this application at the mastery level gave me that opportunity to, embrace my own uniqueness. And I think there's the beauty of it. Related point is the process honoring diversity and inclusion. And this is not just a nice to have thing, which you are expected to adhere to the diversity and inclusion statement and say that you honor and you stand by it. But I think the point that mastery is not a one size fits all. There is no one type of MP and there is no one preferred approach to application. Which I hope that you would also be able to gather through listening to three of us here, and Sandra and Vincent, who probably are far more accomplished than I am. But I think we would see that diversity, and therein lies the beauty that every one of us who believes we are at that level. I think this process allows us to honor it, and thereby is the starting point for embracing D&I in our own practice. The last thing is making a real difference. When you talk about your commitment or contribution to the profession, it's beyond going beyond your skills, your talents, and your capability within the coaching room. It's not who you are on the coach's chair or the mentor's chair, which is very important, but also who you are outside in the world. And I'd like to really sign off with this statement, which is what I put in my application. I'm not sure whether Chandana remembers this. So I asked this question saying, how can we coaching professionals go beyond mastery and excellence in our craft and contribute systemically to the greater good? And this was a theme that was underlying my entire application and the many months of reflection that I went through. And I think this is the reason to call my journey a celebration, and much to celebrate on the journey. And I think that three-letter word, EIA, MP, is just the cherry on the cake. Thank you for the time and to allow me to really share and narrate what's been very meaningful to me. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Vijay Lakshmi. That was really inspirational. And I saw a chat in there saying that they loved the principles that you put out, and it's so personal. So thank you so much. I just want to say what you said about self-reflection and self-awareness there. I vividly remember your application as you were talking, and the depth of your application still stays with me. And I think I want to give a message here from just listening to Vijay Lakshmi is EMCC really sees the master practitioner as a journey. It's not a tick box exercise. It's not just, okay, I've got this, I've been doing it for so long, so let me put it in there. It gives you the opportunity to almost like your identity, this is who I am, and the way you approached this shows you're a master practitioner. So thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing your journey. I'm sure those who are here has taken a lot out of it. Thank you so much. Vincent, I'd like to invite you now to come and tell us your story.
Thank you, Chandana, and just hello, everybody. It's just a pleasure to be with you today. I hope you find this useful. I feel truly honoured also to be sharing my story with you. I am based in Sheffield in the north of England. I'm currently an associate professor of change leadership at Sheffield Hallam University in our business school, and I'm also a proud global volunteer with the EMCC. What I'd like to share with you are a number of things. I'd like to share my background with you so you get a sense of where I was coming from as I entered into my coaching journey. I'll then move on to talk about my application process in 2017 and how I found that experience. I am absolutely delighted that Stephen Murphy is with us today because he was my assessor. I'd like to give you a sense of what I've done since then, and also what motivates me around the EMCC. So I hope you find this useful and maybe even motivational in terms of where you are. I will say from the outset that for me, it was tricky engaging with this process because the word master or mastery didn't sit very comfortably on my shoulders. And it was only because a few people suggested that I go for it that I even thought about it in the first place. So listen out to those people around you who are maybe suggesting it or encouraging you to go for it, because they may well have clocked something about you that you may not have noticed about yourself. Anyway, this is my background. I won't go through it all, but it's quite a varied career. Some of it is in the corporate world, some of it's in Africa, some of it I was leading coaching programs. And for the last 8 years, I've been based at Sheffield Hallam University. So I think I've had quite a varied career. I had no idea at the start that I was going to end up as a coach or as an educator, but that's the way my career has gone, and I'm happy with that. What I've done is I've taken the triangle and I went back to my application form, which I haven't looked at in years, and I just noted where was I in those 3 areas back in 2017. So I had some academic qualifications under my belt. I had a lot of coaching hours. My initial training was back in 2014. So I had been doing a lot of one-to-one work and group work and organizational change right back from, so that was 2004. And so I had a lot of experience back from then. So I built up quite a quantity of clients and across a wide range of industries as well. And I found initially when I was trying to identify my coaching hours, I thought that was going to be a real chore. But when I went back and looked at it, it was actually a very validating and developmental process, remembering all of the work that I'd done. And sure, there were some clients where it didn't go quite well, but in general, it had gone well. And I found it a very useful process to go back and look at some of that work. I had been receiving supervision for many years with David Megginson, who some of you might know is sadly no longer with us. And in terms of what I was doing in terms of the contribution, at that stage, I had led the validation of the MSc in coaching and mentoring at Sheffield Hallam University. I'd gained senior practitioner for that course. I'd led a number of EMCC EQA training programs, for example, for the National Health Service in the UK, for British Gas, for other organisations. And I then had presented at EMCC conferences around some projects, one for Surrey County Council, one was on authentic practice, and the third one was using Csikszentmihalyi's concept of flow in coaching. I should say that, and Chandana can correct me if I'm wrong, but the requirement around research I see as being very much around doing something and sharing it with others. I don't think it has to be quite at the level of academic rigor that you may fear. So it's a very doable task. I'd also got involved with the Global Provider Summits way back a number of years ago, where I shared my experiences with other providers of how we had embedded the EQA process into our training program. So that's where I was in 2017. As I say, some people suggest that I went for a Master Practitioner, and I went for it. I found that the filling in the form was actually much less troublesome than I thought, and overall it was quite an enjoyable process, reflecting back and seeing it as a learning opportunity. As I say, the form was much easier than I was expecting. I was really glad I kept detailed records of my coaching conversations, and that is probably speaking to some other people, that is the one thing that has held some people back, because they haven't kept records. Keep records, go back. I found just looking at email trails of when I had various meetings was the way to do it. I built up an Excel spreadsheet of my clients, of the number of hours, of what the topics were, and then very quickly the numbers mounted up, as I say, much quicker than I expected. I did fear the assessment conversation, and I guess I saw it as an interview. But as I say, I'm delighted that Stephen's with us, because Stephen was my assessor, and I cannot tell you how lovely it was, because the conversation was very reflective. I found Stephen really supportive, very much one of encouraging me to own the development and the achievements that I had gained, and appreciate them, and encourage me to be thinking about what next. So rather than it being a grilling on what I had done or what I hadn't done or how I had done something, it was very, very generous and very developmental. And as I say, I left the meeting with a real spring in my step. I'm not sure, Stephen, if I thanked you at the time, but thank you. It was really wonderful. And I think that's the way I would encourage people to enter this process. See it as a developmental opportunity to go through, rather than a form to fill in and a form to defend and a form to get stressed about. So in terms of what have I done since 2017? Well, I've gained some other qualifications and some accreditations through my university connections. I think I've got well over 900 hours with 130 clients. I just haven't. I've got the record, but I didn't compile it for today's meeting. I now have 18 years experience, and I'm getting supervision with 2 people. I find that helps me. One helps me think more about me, and the other one is a very systemic practitioner who helps me think about the work that I'm doing. And in terms of what I've been doing, I see myself as, yes, being a coach, mentor, supervisor, but the main focus of my work is embedding coaching and mentoring and supervisory concepts into bigger, more impactful programs and projects. So some of you may be aware of that there's a large apprenticeship program within the UK. So I've built our Sheffield Hallam's senior leader apprenticeship, but we've embedded coaching principles within that. Sometimes invisibly, we don't overtly describe that something is being done in a coaching way, because there's a different message to get across at that stage. But a lot of the teaching and a lot of the work that we do is underpinned by coaching principles. In particular, the pedagogy, we focused a lot upon how we can use coaching concepts as a means of education, very much moving away from a chalk and talk, teacher knows best, to one where it's an adult-to-adult relationship with the learner in the room. So where the student becomes the learner and the teacher becomes the collaborator. So very much about embedding coaching and mentoring principles into the work that we do at Sheffield Hallam. I've led many leadership webinars using coaching as a pedagogy, and I've also taught many sessions with coaching as an overt skill for people to learn. I'm also very proud to be part of a program called the Help to Grow Management Program. Some of you may be aware of. It's a huge program that about 60 universities in the UK are collaborating on. Sheffield Hallam is one of them, but I'm also working nationally with that team. It's the Chartered Association of Business Schools, and I'm supporting that central team who have government funding to deliver this program in terms of how is facilitation done, how is the mentoring on the program done, and how is the change leadership aspects of the program done in a coaching way, you might say. I'm proud to have been part of the team that defined the team coaching standards, and I've also been quite heavily involved in the global provider summits over the last few years. I chaired a few, I've ran a few, I've worked with Denise and Nicola a little bit a few months ago in thinking about the summit this week, and I delivered a session with Paul Manners there yesterday. So it's all just taken off, and what I find is that it's like a hot knife through butter, just by engaging with the EMCC, both as a professional at Sheffield Hallam, but also as a global volunteer. Really interesting things are happening for me, and they're very generative. One thing leads to another, and that I really get a kick out of. What I thought might also help. It certainly helped me to prepare this slide, was to think about what motivates me in relation to the EMCC, because I think it's important for anybody going for Master Practitioner to question, hold up to the light, what is it about the EMCC that appeals to you? There may be a commercial objective, there may be an accreditation that we can add to our CVs, but there may be more than that for you, and there is more than that for me. I'll just go through these. I feel more me when I'm with folks like you, when I coach and mentor and when I lead educational programs, I just feel more me, and I like that feeling. I passionately believe that more can be achieved and people can be in a better place in terms of well-being when we take a more engaged approach that allows people to hear one another and be heard, where the things that aren't said are said, or the things that we don't even know about ourselves are revealed to ourselves and to others. And for me, working in a coaching way allows, through deep listening and understanding awareness of system dynamics, etc., it allows those voices to be heard and for people to relax into a different type of conversation. For me, also, there's also the fact that EMCC validates needed conversations that I have with other people. The EMCC is a helpful authority that helps other people to listen to other ways of working. What I mean is, if I'm working with a particular client or a particular group, I can say, hey, you aware of the EMCC? You aware of all of this stuff? And they say, no. And then I say, well, there's a body of thinking that says that maybe by getting people to open up, etc., etc. And they go, oh, what's all that about? So it's like there's a power to my elbow, to use that phrase. And finally, I get a buzz out of working with people in the EMCC, folks like you. I feel a sense of kindred spirit with you, with EMCC people, and I get a real sense of shared pride in what I do. And there's one other thing I'll add. I love the way that the EMCC is generating, it generates and it regenerates. So it's always moving forward, and that I get a real big kick out of that. So hope you found that useful. These are suggestions, and I wish you lots of luck on your own journey. And I'll bring it to a close there, if I may, Chandana.
Thank you so much, Vincent. It was really, I lost track of time even. It was so good to hear not only, the story of your application, but also all the things you've been doing over the last year, and your contribution and commitment to the coaching and mentoring field continues to grow. So again, thank you very much for sharing that and giving people an overview of your practice across so many years. And I think that's one of the things. And you talked about the professional dialogue, which you saw as an interview. And I just want to say that we have the professional dialogue at the end of a master practitioner application, but we see it more as a celebratory conversation, as well as an opportunity to reflect where you are and where you want to move forward. And I think, Vincent, your example was a really good one in terms of where you moved since your award, your application process and your award. So thank you. That's, I think, really useful for those of us who are here and hearing about the whole process and what's the expectation, but also the commitment, the ongoing commitment. Why are you wanting to be a master practitioner? So next steps is also really important. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Chandana.
So I'm sure there'll be questions. So, but I'd like to now invite Sandra. So Dr. Sandra Wilson, I'd like to invite you. You've completed your master practitioner application maybe more recently, and we're looking forward to hearing your journey.
Thank you very much, Chandana. I thought I would just start with telling you a little bit about me. And when I was reflecting and doing my preparation for this session, I thought, where do I start? Because the journey to mastery, I think, started when I left school. So I left school age 16 with 5 O grades, which if you weren't educated in Scotland, you probably won't understand, but it's a very basic qualification. Having been told by my careers advisor that I had no prospects, I should get married and have children. So there's a rebel in me. So somewhere that stirred up my rebel. I was very lucky. I joined the Scotch whisky industry, which is an industry that I'm hugely proud to have been part of. And I worked for someone that believed in developing people. And I started as a secretary in a global company. And I ended up in the UK-wide position of learning and development manager. And this is important because of all the fantastic learning opportunities I got in that organisation. That's where I was introduced to coaching. I left corporate life and set up my own business. And I continue to run my own business with some thoughts of retiring, but I'm not quite there yet. So as you look back, only look back to see how far you've come, not to punish yourself for not being far enough forward. If I could have the next slide, please, Chandana. So just a bit of history about my qualifications. So my careers advisor stirred something up in me that I was going to do something. I just wasn't quite sure what. The organisation that I worked for got interested in coaching in 1991 and sent me, along with 16 of my colleagues, to San Francisco to train with Tim Galway as an inner game coach. So I came back and I started practicing as a coach. And I noticed that I needed more depth to my practice. So I just had a look around various psychological models, and I opted to become a teaching and supervising transactional analyst in the organisational field. I started that journey in 1998 and completed it in 2008, not because I'm a slow learner, but because it is quite a long and arduous journey, which requires many hours of practical application, many hours of teaching, many hours of supervision. In 2003, I trained as a mentor. In 2006, I did ICF accredited coach training, leading to a professional certified coach. And just because I wanted to see coach training from another perspective, I also did an EMCC accredited coach training program. In 2008, I did a diploma in supervision. And in 2011, I got the ICF MCC credential. And I became a doctor of professional studies in coaching psychology in 2017. And Chandana's right, I was awarded my Master Practitioner credential earlier this year. So what was my plan when I was doing all these qualifications? Well, my plan was I had no plan. There was no plan at all. But what I did was I constantly asked myself the same question. What's the best thing I can offer this client in this situation, in this moment? And that's been my guiding question throughout my whole career. So how did all of this emerge then? Well, curiosity and emergence go hand in hand for me. So curiosity is my guide. So I'm curious about what's emerging in the professional field in which I operate. I'm curious about what client organisations need, what I can offer, how I can do it well, and how can I evaluate the results? How can I encourage the client organisation to evaluate the results? So I think curiosity is the most powerful thing we have. And in staying curious from a place of absolute childlike curiosity, we can keep moving forward. So why Master Practitioner and why now? And basically a colleague said, I think you should go for a Master Practitioner. Immediately, my negative core belief comes into play. So I defend that by saying, oh, I'm not jumping through any more hoops to get any more qualifications. And I reflected on, I'm not going to give up doing something I like doing to do something I don't like doing to prove a point to people who don't care anyway. And that was something that I learned very, very early on in my career. And as I thought about the application process, I did get quite scared about it. And I noticed my pattern. So I've got a gremlin that lives within me, and the gremlin is sometimes helpful, but largely unhelpful. So I do suffer from imposter syndrome from time to time. I'm getting better at managing that and noticing it. I was telling myself things like, if you don't bother to go for it, then you can't be rejected. And the gremlin was saying, you haven't done enough to get that credential. Because I was looking at the sort of people that I look up to as leaders in our professional field and thinking, I don't stand on the same plane as they do. So there was an internal dialogue that was all the time talking me out of going for the qualification. However, I decided to keep calm and go for gold, which is what I did. And that's what I feel I got, not just in the qualification, but in the journey that this qualification invited me to go on. And I think I'm echoing what my two colleagues have said already. And when I started to reflect on what has my contribution to the field of coaching and coach education been, everything I've done because I wanted to make a difference. And I'm inspired to make a difference. So here are some of the projects and programs that I believed would make a difference at the time of offer. So in 2008, coaching was really getting off the ground. I live in Scotland, and so I obviously do a lot of work in Scotland. What I noticed was there was an ad hoc approach to the implementation of coaching. And as an organisation development specialist, I want to make sure that what's ever done in the name of development actually fits with the corporate strategy. So I introduced that system, which was picked up robustly and fairly solidly in the public sector in Scotland. Out of that came a request for me to design and deliver internal coach training programs. And in 2008, as part of my TA journey, supervision was second nature to me. So supervision became part of coach training. From that, as I was supporting organisations to develop and implement their strategy, came an identified need for leaders to be able to have coaching conversations. This programme is still running today, although it's been through several iterations. And this week, I achieved 10,000 leaders through that particular programme. I designed and delivered a diploma in business coaching. So I was really moving into, if you like, frontline coach education at this point in time and running a public programme. It was accredited both by ICF and the Association for Coaching. That programme still runs today in, again, a different iteration, and it's run across the UK and in Europe. Again, supervision was one of the pillars on which that programme was built. I designed and delivered a diploma in coach supervision, which has been running since 2012. Again, that's a UK and European offer. And in 2013, I approached my then professional body, the ICF, and I said, I think the next big thing is team coaching. I'd be really interested in looking at the development of competences. And for whatever reason, ICF didn't seem to be ready to bite. So I went ahead, designed the programme, developed a set of team coaching competences, implemented it, and that programme is still running, although again in another iteration. I continue to design and deliver programmes of masterclasses for coaches, mentors and supervisors, and I've been doing that since 2011, and I do that across the UK and Europe, and I have managed, also as a result of the pandemic, I've managed to have a wider reach, and I've been able to reach out to the Americas and also to China and to South Africa. So that's a bit about the projects and programmes. And the second area for me was making a difference and being inspired to do some research. So I embarked on a Doctor of Professional Studies programme, and I graduated in 2017 with that wonderful credential in coaching psychology. And it was the proudest day of my life to walk across that stage and be handed that qualification, reflecting on the teacher who told me, the careers advisor who told me I wouldn't make anything of myself. I actually said a silent thank you to her for that. My curiosity in doing the research was to look at the power and influence of the coach's unconscious mind on the coaching process. As a transactional analyst, I come from a psychodynamic perspective, so I believe that the unconscious mind is at work all the time. And I was just curious to do some research, in-depth research, with a fairly small group of research participants, to go through an iterative process of deepening their reflection just to see what emerged, using interpretive phenomenological analysis. So I had 8 participants, which is actually quite a big number for that type of research. It was a journey of self-discovery for the research participants, but it was also a huge journey of self-discovery for me. One of the things that came out of it was the identification that the coaches who participated, and myself included, we had 3 different aspects to ourselves. So we had the self that we present, that we think everybody wants to see. Then we had an emerging self where we deepen our reflection, we get more self-understanding. And then we get to the authentic or autonomous self, where we are operating as the best version of ourselves most of the time, not all of the time, because we're human beings. And one of the things that came out of this piece of research, one of the key things for me was my argument for psychological awareness as part of coach education programs. So that was the academic research. And Chandana, if I could have the next slide, please. So I've also done some non-academic research. In 2021, I conducted some research into the impact of the pandemic on professional relationships and what that would mean for us as coaches and team coaches. So this came out of what I was feeling myself as a practitioner, moving from working face-to-face to working on a digital platform, being separated from my clients and my colleagues, what I was hearing people who were coming for coaching and supervision were bringing. And so I just set about setting up the research myself without any academic cooperation. And we've just started, my colleague and I, Radomira Gilarova, in cooperation with EMCC, I'm delighted to say, we are now conducting a piece of research. How do coaches and mentors perceive supervision? And how does this influence their willingness to engage in the process? And just in case any of you out there are really excited about answering or supporting the answers to that question, it's not too late to participate in the research. It's in 2 stages, and you can actually access stage 1, which is a survey. And please think about it. We are just filled with curiosity about how our peers and colleagues in this system perceive supervision. So publications, I've never really got to the stage of writing a whole book, but I'm very happy to write a chapter because that doesn't feel like such a long journey. So my publications, I was asked by a transactional analyst colleague to do a piece. So I did something which I call Autonomy in the Growing Edge. And that's very much about how we work with the unconscious mind, and we support clients to move through and beyond their limiting beliefs, and it's using a transactional analysis approach. I was delighted to be invited by Stephen Palmer and the late wonderful Alison Wybrow to write a chapter on transactional analysis approaches to coaching for the Second Handbook of Coaching Psychology. And more recently, I was invited by Peter Welsh to contribute to an EMCC publication on supervision, advancing practice and changing landscapes. And again, this was about the power and influence of the unconscious mind and how, as supervisors, we can pay attention to that and we can invite deeper reflection from our supervisees. I've written a number of journal articles from 2010 onwards, and I continue to write, and I'm working on something at the moment for the International Transactional Analysis Journal. So my contribution to professional associations, 2005 to 2008, when EMCC was in its evolution, I was party to the organisation of the European Conference. 2005 to 2008, I was a presenter each year at EMCC conferences, and I always did a coaching demonstration. And I remember being terrified the first time I did this. It was in Amsterdam, and one of my colleagues came up and said to me, "Oh, I see you're doing a coaching demonstration. That's very brave." And at no point when I'd offered, until the point when that person said that, had I thought it was about bravery. I thought it was just about showing up, and this is what I do. Since 2009, I've been doing some workshops for coaches for ICF. I guess I came home to EMCC as recently as 2021, and I offered a workshop conference, and it was looking at the new organizational landscape, post-pandemic, what I was noticing people had gone through, what they were reporting on, and what that meant for us as coaches, mentors, and supervisors in adjusting to make sure we meet the client's needs. In 2021, I was involved with my colleague Radmira Gilarova, looking at supervision, and we were inviting people to share their perceptions. Did they see supervision as a friend or an enemy? And earlier this month, I did another supervision session with my colleague at the GPS about supervision as a journey of self-discovery. So if I could have the next slide, Chandana. So I wanted to say something just by way of wrapping up about the process, the EMCC process and my internal process. And so this is what my gremlin looks like. And my gremlin is a flamethrower. And just when I think I'm going to go for something and I can do this, the gremlin throws a spanner into the works. But I also want to honour and recognise that the gremlin's not all bad, because what that gremlin continues to support me to do is deep self-reflection, not on what I do, but who I am and my way of being in the world, whether it's as a wife, a relative, a friend, a professional, a colleague. It's the self-reflection. And this is important for me because I think I'm pretty damn good at self-reflecting. But if I connect this to the EMCC process, the journey of reflection to get the Master Practitioner qualification was an amazing journey for me. It made me press a pause button and look back over the years and really say, how did I get to be where I am today? And to be thankful for all the opportunities I've had. But I chose this graphic because the EMCC process for me was a gold star process. I was treated with dignity and respect throughout the process. I was, like Vincent, I was terrified. I think I wasn't just scared, I was terrified about the process. I kept wondering whether what I had done was enough, because I was really wanting to stand with, I consider to be the big players in the coaching profession. I was encouraged, I was supported, I was helped, and I owe a huge debt of gratitude to Chandana for the way that she supported me, encouraged me, and dealt with me. And it was an amazing journey. And I have to agree with what's been said before. I think EMCC is gold star. I think it's amazing, the constant invitation into deep reflection on not only what we do, but who we are. And that's what puts EMCC head and shoulders above any of the other coaching professions, professional bodies. That's my opinion, but it's also my experience. So I'm just going to say a huge thanks to EMCC for all of the volunteers, for all of the people that are involved in this process. And if you had any doubt at all about being supported through the process, then my invitation is let go of those doubts, because if you're ready, and you will get the support you need. If you're not quite ready, you'll get the support you need to be ready. So thank you very much for listening.
You've just concluded perfectly this discussion. And I'd like now to, in the way you finished and you've acknowledged the process, I think it's so much better coming from you as being a participant and a part of the process than from some of us who work towards this. So great, thank you so much for this. I'd like now to invite people to ask any questions. We've got 15 minutes left, so we're a little bit run over, but any questions, any comments, any observations would be great. And I'm just going to check the chat. So please unmute, and it'll be great if you've written any questions in the chat. There's opportunity to now just come in and ask any questions. We've got Sylviane. So Sylviane, if there's anything you would like to say and add, that would be great.
Chandana, may I say something? My name is Akira. I was blown away with Sandra's statements only because I've just come through it myself. I've recently achieved my Master Practitioner, and I cannot look, I don't have a doctorate. I studied, I worked hard. I've done 11,000 hours of coaching practice. Denise was absolutely marvelous in holding my hand through it. Yeah, it's a journey of reflection. She said, just go back and see what you've done. And I was appointed in a corporate role in a very big Fortune 500 business. The boss saying to me in 2006, I'm not hiring you for them lot out there as HR director. I'm hiring you because I need a coach. And I'm thinking to myself, heck, I don't know what a coach does, but he's the one who put me through my postgrad qualification. And you know what? It still holds me in good stead. So I really cannot emphasize enough to say, don't discount your past experience, your 11,000 hours of coaching, 356 teams. And, as I went through them, it was a bit like what Sandra was saying. Gosh, have I really done that? Oh my God, yes, I remember that team. I did this with them. That absolute richness and the reflection of just knowing that this is what you have done and this is what you've contributed. So yeah, heck, hats off to you, Sandra. And thank you very much. And yeah, I'm a volunteer as well, so a little bit biased now, but there you go. I just thought I had to say my piece. It's only very new, but I would encourage anybody and everybody who wants to do it to just go for it.
Thank you so much for adding your own experience. Thank you so much for that. That's always really great. And let's see if there's anybody else who would like to share their experience or any questions you want to ask. I've just looked at the chat. Some of the questions have been answered. It looks like really positive feedback, but I think there was a question asked earlier about if you want to apply for the application, what's the process? Is there an application form between senior practitioner and master practitioner? So what I would say is I've put my email address there. One of the things we really encourage is this, having the opportunity for a one-to-one dialogue. So you can tell us where you think you are and we can align it to the requirements, because as we said, it has to be substantial and substantive. And so it is a useful conversation. And I think both, all three of our master practitioners said it's, either you are on your journey, you might be in the middle, but, you can have an action plan as to how to get there. So that professional dialogue is really helpful. And if you feel you've worked to the, you've heard the examples, so in terms of the depth and the breadth of contribution we are looking for, if you feel that, you're ready to start your master practitioner journey, we are here to have a dialogue with you. There was another question is, I'm just coming to you, Sylviane. I just quickly saw that somebody asked about the global contribution. I mean, one of the things we would say, we are looking for the depth of the contribution. This is an EMCC Global accreditation. So I think Vijay Lakshmi, you talked about, I was doing regional work, but you were actually, an ICF is an international body, and you were doing a lot of work through your ICF platform, which was reaching out globally. So it's not that, you will, in your work, you are working across much wider context is what we would be looking for. But again, it's the conversation as the context. So, if you've got two contribution, both don't have to have that global if it's not there, or what are the next steps to the global approach, or the next step to making it, from regional to national to global. So that's the conversation over the professional dialogue to have, to get clarity, to get a further understanding. So like was said, every master practitioner context is different. So therefore the one-to-one conversation is really useful. One cannot compare, I cannot compare to the three master practitioners here, and similarly, that will be the case. Each one of us will be unique. So that's why we suggest the one-to-one contribution. I'd like to ask Sylviane to come in, please.
Yes, Sandra, with pleasure. Thank you so much. There is one thing that I raise quite often, is that when we have some MP applicants who don't speak any English, that is more difficult. I personally watch Italians, Hungarians, Germans, etc., and French. And I know that I want to reassure them, because sometimes let me give you an example. I had a lady who was in Strasbourg in France, and I said, if you can cross the region and go to another part of France, and it's already you spread. Okay. Same with Italians. The point is difficult to be going global, but I think it's more an approach. So I think we still have to, I usually lobby for them. And you know, Sandal, it's a question of substantive contribution. It must be substantive. Even if it's substantive, even at a local level, it's okay. But it's not to be on a board from time to time, making a contribution from time to time. And the depth is really important. But it's a challenge for the ones who don't speak English, indeed. So I don't think if we have a solution for that, Sandana, if I challenge you a little bit.
I mean, what we are trying to do is to build capacity for master practitioner assessors with all the variety of languages.
Of course.
So EMCC is really committed, as I said, to the inclusivity. So that's the underlying principle, and to identify, assessors with this wide language. As EMCC has become, the platform is changing. We are, reaching many more countries. So that's the aim. Ideally, yes, we would like to offer you an assessor who speaks the language, and we are working towards that. But we have several. You're one of our assessors for master practitioner, Sylviane, and you speak a lot of languages. So so we are building the capacity around that.
Thank you. Sorry, I have to go. Thank you. Thank you so much. It was so useful. Thank you. Bye for now.
Thank you for joining, Sylviane. So I've put my email address there. There was a question earlier. There was a question about, can I just go for master practitioner straight away? And that, that do I have to go through this two-step process? Now, it'll again depend on your context. One of the things EMCC does promote a lot is a two-step process, because, like we said, there's an emphasis on reflection depending on what qualifications you're coming with. So we do, and just in terms of equivalence, we do have equivalence. So PCC, ICF PCC, and ICF MCC is equivalent, if you like, in terms of the qualification is to senior practitioner. So a master practitioner is kind of a standalone. There's no direct match. So it will depend upon the depth of your qualification, the areas that is you've heard the journey and the story. So sometimes people are already there, and then that's absolutely fine. But generally, I have to say, what we find is that at least two-step process is what we recommend to kind of strengthen the areas, and then to be working towards it. It will depend on the qualification, the context, and the depth of the work you've done so far, though.
Chandana, maybe I can share a little bit about my experience when I obtained mine in 2019.
Yeah, please do.
At the time, I got my qualification in January 2019, but the year before I was considering applying for the senior rather than masters. And what I decided to do is to just hold it for 6 months more till I got my reflection and all of the work really crystallized. So when I submitted the application, I was ready to submit the application. I had already the number of hours, the contribution and everything else, but I think it was more of a personal journey on when I felt that I was ready to put forward the application with confidence. And I must say that the work of Denise and Chandana on that front was exceptional. And I felt really handholded in the process. It was a very welcoming, friendly process. So no fears should be considered in this process. It's a very, very friendly and thorough process for qualification. So it was a delight. That's all I would say.
And we've got a few minutes left. I want to, before we finish, it will be really helpful now in terms of bringing our master practitioners back here and asking you a very simple question. Thank you very much for the story and the way you shared it. You brought yourself into the journey. And you also told us about the application process itself. So thank you so much to all three of you. Given that we've 5 minutes left, what I'd like to do is to invite each one of you, maybe in the order you came, you presented. So starting with Vijay Lakshmi, if you can just kind of give a 30-second reflection on what stays with you from this presentation and the chat conversation and some of the questions. Thank you, Vijay.
Just joyous and humbled to be here. And I think inspiration is all around us. We just have to look. And I leave the session feeling very inspired and encouraged to do and be a lot more. Thank you.
Thank you. And Vincent?
Thanks, Chandana. I think well, it's been lovely being part of this, and I really genuinely hope people have got something out of this from what I've brought. I guess what my final thoughts is don't think this is an exclusive club. There may be people on this chat, on this Zoom, who think this isn't for me, or it isn't for somebody like me, or it isn't for somebody from the country I live in, or that maybe things around feeling of fraud or whatever that. I think put that aside and go for it. There's so much opportunity here. The thing I've just put in the chat is to really, if you're looking for extra contributions, consider becoming a global volunteer. I have no vested interest in saying this, but the work that I've done as a global volunteer, I've really enjoyed it. I've worked with incredible people, and I think we've done some really good work. So maybe think about becoming a global volunteer. And there's a question in my mind, Chandana, as to how people can reach out for that, but maybe we can pick it up separately.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you, Vincent. And Sandra, your reflection.
Yeah, I'd like to start by saying thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to talk about my journey, because there was another journey of self-reflection in the preparation for today. What I would want to say to people that are considering it, don't think about the qualification, think about the journey. And the qualification, I think Vijay said at the start, that's the cherry on top. But the journey for me was so powerful and so developmental and so affirming because of the way EMCC works. Getting the qualification was great, but the journey was the experience.
Thank you. So nicely put there, Sandra. And I just want to finish by thanking the three of you for being here. I didn't give you much notice, but thank you for volunteering and taking the time. I know, as you said, Sandra, it takes time for preparation, thinking through how you want to present and how you want to bring yourself in terms of the application process. And also for me, my reflection is the way you've taken us through your journey is what is really needed for future master practitioners to get them into the headspace. Because, you know, a written set of application or the guidance can't do what you guys have just done now. You've just made it live. You've told us your story. You've related it to the requirements for EMCC. And a huge thank you to you all in terms of acknowledging that the aim for EMCC is very much to be inclusive, to make it a journey of reflection, of dynamic dialogue, to help you in whatever stage of you are in terms of holding, you know, and supporting you to get to the master practitioner journey. So like I said, if you're interested, you want to discuss more, do come back to us. But a huge thank you in terms of the contribution and the way you made you know, the whole journey come live for those of us who've been listening. Thank you so much.